Hi everybody, I'm Mike Jacobson, President of Inventors Network. Our topic for November 2020 is Invention Licensing for Dummies. Our speaker today is Christopher Hawker, who's the founder of Trident Designs in Columbus, Ohio.
All right,
Chris,
thank you, Mike.
You got the floor.
Thank you, Mike. And hello, everyone. And thank you for tuning in today to learn about licensing. As Mike said, my name is Chris Hawker, and I'm a professional inventor, and I run Trident Design LLC, where I'm the founder. Our website's Trident Invents, that's Trident, like the gum. And anyway, I'm excited to share with you guys about how to make money from your ideas. So I became a professional inventor when I was quite young, 16 years old. I had an aquarium maintenance business where I was setting up aquariums in people's houses and taking care of them, and I discovered that I was having ideas for improved filters and maintenance equipment, and then I would tinker around, figure out how to make them, and discovered I had a knack and a passion for problem solving, and eventually I could sell some of my ideas to some of my clients and make money. And I was like, wow, this is a cool way to make money. And I decided early on that I wanted to pursue this as a career. So when I got a little older, right after I graduated from the Ohio State University, I started my invention company, Trident, where I was first focused on aquarium products, and my first big success, so to speak, was an algae removal system, an algae scraper. So I had years of experience cleaning algae off of aquarium walls, and I spent many, many hours doing this. And the whole time I was doing it, the equipment that was available was very low quality. You had basically magnetic scrapers, which were fine if you were cleaning one aquarium in your home, but I was cleaning dozens of aquariums every day, and I wanted something nicer. And on a stick, all you had a cheap sponge on a stick. So very low quality tool. And I was like, how come a carpenter has a nice hammer, but I have to live with this crappy sponge on a stick? And so I said, there's got to be a better way. And so I came up with the Pro Scraper, which I ended up striking a distribution deal with a company called Kent Marine, and it became the Kent Marine Pro Scraper, which was the first professional quality algae scraper in the world. And henceforth I became Algae Boy, which was not necessarily a cool label, but I did sell a lot of algae scrapers, which was amazing. In fact, I thought I'd sell a few thousand a year to professionals like myself, which was a very small niche, but it turned out that just anyone who was serious about their aquarium wanted to use our algae scrapers. And also, the public aquariums used them, and actually to this day, they're still the algae scraper of choice at places like the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. So that's cool, right? And that was over 20 years ago, and that product's still on the market and still serving people and doing a good job. So that was my first successful product, and I didn't realize then how lucky I was with that one product. I thought I was smart, I thought I must know something, and therefore I was going to make it rich as an inventor, and I started inventing a bunch more items right away. I was a guitar player, so I started designing some guitar accessories, and I had a friend who was really into cooking, and I would cook with him, and we started having cooking gadget ideas, and we started developing all these ideas, and I was investing a lot of my own money made from the algae scraper in developing my new ideas. Well, turned out I was quickly learning that how lucky I'd been the first time, because maybe my next 10 products were just complete flops, and I was burning through all of my money on these next ideas. But as I was continuing to have learning experiences, because I refused to ever accept failure, you win or learn, and so I kept learning a lot, maybe too much, but I was looking at what was working and not working, so that I would increase my chances of being successful again. And actually, the next big success I had were these guys here. These are the onion goggles, which are goggles so you don't cry when you chop onions. And it's a silly, people laugh, onion goggles, ah, ha, 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 ha. And they're a monotasker, and no one really needs these, is what you might think. And on the other hand, they turned into a gift item, because for the person who has everything, who loves the kitchen, they would get bought these as a gift. And when they would buy them, they would give them a 5-star review on Amazon, and actually we've sold over 1 million pair of these onion goggles in a licensing arrangement with a company called RSVP. So this was the product where I first really learned about licensing. Because with my algae scraper, I've been making the product myself. I bought the molds and got all the tooling made, and would produce them and sell them through my distribution partner, Kent Marine. But there was a lot of money moving around, and I would spend a lot of time managing this production. With the onion goggles, I was collaborating with another company who already had distribution in all the kitchen industry and on Amazon and in the big box retailers. So they would do all that work and pay me a royalty, and I would get a check every quarter that was thousands of dollars. And I was like, wow, this is great. I don't have to do any work or even think about it. It just, the check shows up. And I'd done that deal with that because I was busy selling my aquarium products, and I didn't feel like I had time to start a company and trying to sell products into the cooking industry as well. So I realized that I could continue to develop more and more ideas and license them, even if I was focused primarily on making in this other industry, and really started to focus a lot of my energy on licensing. So that's how I got started in the business of becoming a professional inventor. And what I want you to know is what in the last 25 years, I brought over 100 products to market in all kinds of industries, mostly consumer products, but I've also done some business-to-business type things, and I've been part of some great successes. In addition to the onion goggles, which have sold 1 million pairs, I supported the inventor of the hot dog slicer, who now works for me as one of my licensing agents, a gentleman named Dan Kavanaugh, came to us as a client to create this hot dog slicer. You put a hot dog on it, push that down, and it slices it into non-choking hazard-sized pieces, which turns out to be very important because hot dogs are the #1 choking hazard for kids. And who knew? Anyway, and you put your ketchup in there, and then you can dip it, and that's real cute. And I licensed it to a company called Every Holder, who sold it as an impulse item next to hot dog buns at Walmart. And they were selling 1 million a year. Low-cost item, but very high volume. And then and lately, we've also gotten into toys. This is called a True Balance. This guy here was invented by 2 Danish doctors, occupational therapists, and they've been trying for several years to get this on the market when they found my company, and then we supported them in licensing it and getting it on the market as a toy. They've been trying to license it as a therapeutic product, and we saw toy potential. And in the last 3 years, this has sold over 1 million units as well. It's turned into a major hit. You try to balance these discs, and it sells really well on TV because it's really visually compelling. You can do that. It's fun, and it goes for hours. Really fun product. I've also done electronics and lots of other things. And the cool thing is I've done so much variety, so I've learned about a lot of different industries. And also, I've successfully brought about 100 products to market. I've unsuccessfully not brought probably another 300 or 400 products to market. So I have learned a lot from my failures to cause the successes. And these days, my hit rate is higher than it used to be at first. Remember, in my first product, I got lucky on that first one, and it bought me the time to learn a lot and make a lot of mistakes. But I still continue to make mistakes and continue to make mistakes over the years. And I'm here to give you some guidelines as you look at licensing a product and making money that way, of how to approach that so you can not make the mistakes that I made and avoid the pitfalls that I've fallen into in my own career. So my tuition can benefit you. You don't have to make the same mistakes I made. So what I can do is share with you some of the lessons I've learned about licensing. And so what is licensing? Fundamentally, it's you have intellectual property, you have an idea, and you're going to give it to someone else, and they're going to take your idea, they're going to make it and pay you a royalty. It's like intellectual property, and you're getting rent on that property, just like if you owned real estate property and someone was living on it, they would pay you rent. Same idea, so you're collecting rent for your idea, only now it's this intellectual property, which could be captured by a patent, or a design patent, or a trademark, but generally speaking, it's some idea that someone is paying for the benefit of. This is how inventors make money. There's another way you can make money from ideas, which is to manufacture and distribute your product. And this is a way of that a lot of people think of when they're like, I have an idea and I want to try to make money from it. The first thing they are imagining that means, because it's the most obvious thing, is that they're going to make it and sell it. They're going to start a company. However, to me, that's distinct from being an inventor. An inventor, as I conceive it, is someone who's making money from their ideas, versus an entrepreneur who's starting a company, and that company is going to make money by selling products, and that's a totally different business. And so, if you're interested to be an inventor and you're like an idea person, you have lots of ideas, and you're nonstop thinking of new things, new ways to solve new problems, then there's a great opportunity to make money from your ideas versus having to start a company. problem with starting a company is that that's an incredibly massive endeavor. It takes, relative to licensing, which is still a pretty big thing. Getting your product on the market in any way is a big challenge. It's very challenging, and there's a lot of products trying to make it to market. And not all great ideas get to live. Only some of them are going to make their way to market. And it's not just enough to be a good idea. So we're going to talk about what kind of ideas actually make it, which ones do win, and then support you in picking and pursuing the ideas that have a good chance of winning versus the ones that don't, because there's a difference between a good idea and one that is going to win, an economic opportunity. So there's this choice as someone with an idea: do I want to try to make money starting a company or by licensing? And the choice is really, to me, it's a lifestyle choice. Some people think, oh, I'll make more money if I start a company. Theoretically, well, your chances of success are much lower, your effort's much higher, your time commitment's much higher, the necessary number of skills and level of skills is much higher, the capital is much higher, and the chances of success is much, much lower unless you've done it before and already have a lot of those pieces together because of the number of things you have to get together. Plus, doing all that is typically, you don't see many companies selling products that's one person. You got to start a company. You need to know how to lead. You need to know how to attract other people and be a boss and have all that just to get your product out there and make money. And so after all that expense and all that, a lot of those companies don't make money, and more of them fail than succeed. Now, if you're licensing, all you got to do is have a great idea and get it into a package that allows you to deliver it to another company who can then make that product and pay you money. So to me, it's really when I looked at the math, it became really obvious to me that I wanted to be an inventor, not an entrepreneur in this way. I'm an entrepreneur inventor because I keep coming up with more ideas, but I'm not trying to start a company to make hot dog slicers. Because this hot dog slicer was sold in Walmart by the millions, and I didn't have the capital or the infrastructure to make anything by the millions, let alone where would I put it or to interact with a company like Walmart. And I could have, but for a product like this, if I just got one, the company, every holder that sells this product has hundreds of products. And they have Walmart selling dozens of their products because they have a whole range of cool, innovative, high quality products similar to this. Not super serious, but still nice for what it is. I love my hot dog slicer. And look how cute it is. So not everything needs to be serious, people. Point is, I could never have done this on my own. And it would have taken me years to try to achieve what Walmart was able to achieve in a year. And so they're way more likely to be successful, a company who's already got those relationships, who already has the money, who already has the sales staff, and already the brand and all those pieces, than I am as an entrepreneur. So as an inventor, if I'm trying to make money from my ideas, that's a way easier shot, even if it's still a long shot. They're all a long shot. This is a high-risk type of investment to work on an invention. But it doesn't mean it's not a good idea, and when it works, it can be great. I've had inventions like the onion goggles, 1 million units, 60 cents royalty per unit. Over a bunch of years, it came out in 2004, so 16 years, still nice income for a long period of time and still going strong. So that's the great thing about it. Even if it's a long shot, when it hits, it can be a great win. Not most products turn out to be like the onion goggles, and just like another piece of math here, I've said I had 300 or 400 products that didn't make it to market to have 100 come out, but I've made probably 90% of my income from a dozen. So these are 3 of those that have been really big winners for me, and I've had a few others that were even bigger winners, but most of the products that have made it out have made a little money to an okay amount of money to a middle amount of money. But the vast majority of the revenues come from a few big hits. So it's a numbers game, and it's a bit of a, I don't want to call it luck, but there's a bit of probability here, which is to say you can control some of the factors. So unlike normal gambling, like in Las Vegas, where you're literally playing the odds and have no control over the odds, we control a lot of the odds here by how we execute. Like if we're doing a hot dog slicer, we increase our odds of success by making it look like a cute hot doggy. We made the onion goggles increase their chance of success by making them look cool and distinctive for what they are, and etc. We increase our odds of success by how we play, which makes it an investment versus gambling, but it is always going to be high risk because of the number of stars that have to align to be successful. So you got to make that choice about if you're going to start a company or a license, and I choose licensing because I want to come up with more ideas, not have my whole life disappear into starting a company and not have the time to make anything else. So while I was originally making my algae scrapers and I got the taste of licensing, I quickly gave up that manufacturing business, sold it to the person I was distributing it to so I could focus full time on licensing, and that's where I focused the vast majority of energy for the last 20 years of my business, because the ROI is just so much better when you don't have to make things. You're just like collecting checks after you get it licensed. Now, what does it take to license a product? So let's talk about that. Make that choice. Got an idea, want to license it. Well, at first, I talk about the 4 Ps to have success in licensing. The first P is product. You have to have the right product. Not just any product will do. It's got to be the right kind of product. What does that mean? First of all, for licensing, by far the most attractive market is going to be the consumer products market. Unless you're an expert inside of an industry or a business-to-business industry, it's very difficult to license business-to-business style innovations or inventions if you're not an industry insider. If you are, you know it. If you're not sure, then you're not. And if you know you're not, then you're much better off going after a consumer products type company. So going after, people come to me with automotive ideas sometimes, and really automotive ideas are out of my expertise. I don't have any pathway there. So if you did, I could help someone navigate what it looked like to be a licensed product, but I don't have entree into that market. But the consumer product market companies are always looking for new ideas, especially the smaller and mid-sized companies. The huge ones, maybe less so, and they're harder to work with. But there's a lot of companies out there who are aware that there's a lot of good ideas out there, and they're not always going to be the source of all the good ideas. They see themselves more as publishers. If you think of the book industry, you've got authors and publishers, and the publishers aren't trying to always be the author of every book. They find authors. A lot of companies see themselves that way. They're publishing great products. They're looking for authors, inventors to bring them great ideas. And they've got maybe some of their own ideas, but they're open to other people's ideas. And so be aware that a lot, kitchenwares companies, toy companies especially, hardware companies, consumer electronics companies, are all open to ideas. Not every company, and to varying degrees, but most of them have some appetite for it. Toys being number one. The entire industry is built on licensing. Where do the ideas come from? To have the best ideas is almost always from your personal experience. People who are trying to invent a product to solve someone else's problem very rarely succeed. Unless they're like a serious product development professional who's trained and who's been doing this for years, most people's ideas that work in the end are ideas that they came up with from their own experience, meaning their hobbies, their profession, or in their own daily life, something that they run into over and over again. Because look, if it's happening to you, it's happening to people just like you. Like with me and my algae scraper, I've been scraping algae for years, frustrated. And when I designed it, I wasn't actually designing it to solve someone else's problem. I was designing it to solve my own problem. I wanted the product, I wanted the tool. And once I had it, I was like, people like me will want this. I just underestimated how many people there were like me. And so that product became successful. And so it came out of my own experience. The hot dog slicer came out of Dan Cavanaugh's experience. He's a grandpa, he was taking care of his grandchildren and, slicing up their hot dogs so they wouldn't choke. And he was like, there's got to be a better way. And he came up with the idea for coming up with this, platform with the part that pushes down. And then in our product development, once we started working with him, we're like, how do we give it some emotional appeal so that it's desirable, which is where the little doggy idea came from, which is what really propelled it into success. So it's like you got an idea like hot dog slicer, but the idea is also like what kind of hot dog slicer, what's going to make it special, what's going to give it emotional appeal. Because at the end, what really drives success of products is emotional appeal, sometimes based on how it's solving a problem, sometimes based on its character, like a doggy like that, or this exciting emotion, or in the case of the onion goggles, it's kind of, it's too cool for school, almost self-consciously funny look because it's onion goggles trying to look cool. So anyhow, but the emotional appeal makes a difference. So as you're thinking about your product, you got to really be thinking about how do I make something that's solving a problem that I have, that I would buy and I couldn't help but buy. That's where the best ideas come from your own experience, and again, like professional or hobby as well. Once you have such an idea, the ideas that win are ideas that aren't just like different, but they're better, and they're demonstrably better, instantly recognizable as better than their competitors, and more than 10% better. It can't just be a little bit better, because the products that are already on the shelf, the incumbent, aren't difficult to unseat, right? They've already got the shelf space. The buyer doesn't have to make a thought to continue selling what they're already selling. The inertia will keep the existing product there. So to unseat someone else, you're going to have to be really exciting. And you don't just have to convince the consumer, you have to convince the buyer, and first you have to convince someone at a manufacturer who's going to have to invest in the rest of the development of the product, in the tooling for the product, in inventory for the product, to find out if it will unseat the other products that are already out there. So you really have to have a convincing idea that people are right away, they're like, wow, that's awesome, I get it right away. If you have to explain it to people and it's going to take more than a few seconds, it might not be the right product idea. It might be a great idea. The world might need it desperately, but some ideas die that should or deserve to live because they're too difficult to explain and people can't capture the value. I've seen this over and over where someone has just a great concept, but it's hard for people to understand. And they don't give you the time to explain it in the store. They don't give you the time to explain it if they don't get it the instant they put it in their hands. People aren't patient enough. And you're not at the store as people are walking by to say, hey, don't forget to notice this thing, this is what it does, and convince them. They're just walking by the store on their own agendas. And they have to glance over and see the thing and want it right away. So a lot of inventors get distracted by the wrong ideas. They have an idea, they think it's exciting, but they don't realize how much competition they're up against. They think that just because there's nothing else just like their idea, that they forget that they're also up to every other thing in the world that someone could be spending their money on. So it's really got to be compelling, and it's really got to make a big leap from what's currently available for it to be worth risking on. So as an inventor, you're taking a big risk. And when you're playing poker, you want to wait to play your hand until you have a hand worth playing. Like a lot of poker players lose because they want to play poker. And so they start playing hands they shouldn't play. And they're playing because they want to play instead of wanting to win. And if you really want to win, you got to wait for the hand that's worth playing. Invention is the same way. If you're so eager to play that you ignore signs that maybe your idea, even if it's a great one, isn't an economic opportunity, then you lose the game. You lose the hand and you lose your investment. Even if you play everything right, you never know. There might be a flush out there, even if you've got a full house. And so you really got to be aware that because it's a high-risk game, even if you're doing everything right, sometimes the stars don't align. You've got the right product, you've got a super cool idea, and it makes sense, but there's only so many companies you could potentially license it to. So there's always a chance that they'll all say no, having nothing to do with it being a good idea, but because the market's bad or their priorities are elsewhere. And if you run out of potential licensees, you got no place else to go, your investment is dead for the moment. And so you don't ever want to bet on an invention more than you can afford to lose. So you can, as I like to say, you can bet a barn, but don't bet the farm, right? Like it's going to take something, but you don't want to bet so much that you're going to be in horrible pain afterwards financially and not able to recover from the loss. Now, of course, we always assume it's going to succeed, and we want to make sure that we're not deluding ourselves because we're blinded by how much we're in love with our own idea. So you really want to be looking out for, does this idea really make sense? And so it's got to have those instantly recognizable benefits, and also the complexity of the product needs to be within range of your skill set. Like I wouldn't try to make a car. I wouldn't try to make a computer. I don't know how to do those. I might have some great car ideas. I do. I would love to make a car. That would be so fun and beautiful, and I'd be setting myself up to lose if I went on that path. Could I? Sure. Could I figure it out? Other people have. Why not? But is that how I really want to focus my time? It isn't. It's way out of my comfort zone. A lot of these things are, even a simple product like this is still a challenge. There's no such thing as an easy to bring to market product. They all have challenges. And so do things that aren't such a big stretch and walk before you run. I would highly encourage your first ideas that you're going to invest in not have electronics and not be too complicated. so that they're within your means. The best ideas are things that you understand and that are within your means to develop and give it a shot with. Then, if you have success, you can always level up. As your skills level up and as your capital levels up, as you have success, now you can try bigger and bigger stretches. So focusing close to home on your own experiences, as well as on ideas that are within your skill set, and even if you have to learn something. So every product you might have to learn something. That's fine. I'm not saying only things that you already know, but not things that have so much need to know and so much level of complexity that you're really setting yourself up to lose. So choose your bets carefully. Once you've selected what you think is a product that's got legs, then you need to do some research and do that research. I'm sure you hear about this if you're learning about inventions. The first thing anyone will tell you is do your research, and yet so many of my inventors who show up haven't done the research. So get on Google and go to the Google patent database and search for your product. Search, 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 and then do some more searching. Most people when they're searching are unconsciously looking to not find any bad news. And so they unconsciously sabotage their efforts because they don't want to find out any spoilers. But you're way better off finding out what's out there today than later after you're deeply invested in the product. So better to find that bad news now. It's like going to the dentist, they're like, you got a cavity. Better to find out today than 6 months now and lose the tooth. So this can be I've met inventors who went all in and spent even like hundreds of thousands of dollars on an invention before they did the research. So take the time and search high and low. And before you really go deep on it, hire another person, a third-party expert researcher to do some research for you, because they'll search more objectively than you will. And you really want to know before you go out there. So now if you've got all clear from some research and the idea makes sense for you, both in the complexity and what it's going to cost based on that complexity to develop, and now you can like talk to some people around you too, and like start getting opinions from friends and other people who might be, who might be in the industry. Now some inventors might be like, well, you can't just talk to people, they'll steal your ideas. And generally my experience is that most inventors are radically more worried about fear of ideas, and paranoia stops more ideas than it saves. In fact, I've actually never heard of someone having an idea stolen by another inventor or by another person. They get stolen by Chinese factories, Chinese factories who specialize in knockoffs. Occasionally steal ideas, but typically proven ideas that have already been successful. They don't knock off unproven ideas. Why? There's plenty of proven ones that are lower hanging fruit. So you can talk to your friends and your wife about your idea and get feedback. What do you think? What do you think? You can let them know, please keep this confidential, but if you don't trust your friends, you might want different friends, or you might, look at your trust issues. Just kidding. Anyway, but seriously, if you need an NDA, you can have people sign an NDA, but if you're like really aggressive about not trusting people, then it's going to back people up. So you want to create an atmosphere of trust. Now, there are intellectual property rules, so I'm not saying flaunt those, but there's a lot you can say without disclosing anything and generate interest before you are asking people to sign contracts. But I see a lot of inventors impair their efforts because they won't talk to even people they need to hire to develop things because they're too paranoid. So you can trust people you're going to pay almost always. And those are the people who are really happy and easy to get to sign non-disclosure agreements because you're going to pay them money. So ask them to sign an NDA, awesome. But if you're looking for someone like to give you feedback and it's like a close personal friend you can trust their Scout's honor, and if you can't, really, like I said, an NDA won't protect you, because any contract you sign is only as good as the people who sign it. So invention is a team sport, and it's going to take collaboration. So you got to figure out a way within your comfort zone to do that, and you got to understand the boundaries of intellectual property. So become an expert and learn about intellectual property so you can navigate the field, because it's part of being a professional inventor. And so get your patent basics so you understand the do's and don'ts of disclosure as it relates to your intellectual property, and by and large know that it is very rare for people to steal ideas. Okay, so once you get feedback from some people, trusted associates, about whether the idea has legs. Now, you can't totally trust their feedback though, because they love you or they like you, you're their friend, is they want to give you good news. And so a lot of times they're going to, butter your buns, so to speak, and tell you what they think you want to hear. But that being said, if they're like, yeah, I don't think so, that's like definitely something that you should take a look at if it takes too long for them to understand it. If they're like, that's awesome, then maybe you've got something. All these ingredients, now you've got something that looks good. Now it's worth looking at investing in some of your money, like in a more serious way. So a lot of times people think, what's first? And they think the first stop is going to be to get a patent, but that's actually the last stop. The first stop is to develop a prototype. So you're going to have to turn your idea into a prototype so that you can make sure it works and demonstrate its function. And you want to do that before you file for patents, because the patent itself is going to describe the device, not the idea. And so if you're filing the patent before the device has been sort of worked out, you might file the patent on the wrong device. And then as the device makes its way to market and it changes in certain ways, then the patent no longer applies. So you really want to wait until later in the process, after you've got a nice prototype that's working the way you want it to, before you apply for the patent. You're going to want to wait until then to start shopping around to potential licensees as well. And I definitely encourage you having a patent pending before you go shop it around. So that's how I like to play. There's some people who then will try to use NDAs, and that's where I like to use a patent application, because then I can speak freely. I don't need to worry about that. I don't have to create additional barriers to getting an appointment or getting things moving forward. It's hard enough to get appointments and get conversations and move things forward without introducing a long waiting period. So by having my patent pending, I can move freely, and I always work with an attorney at that point. But I'll get to that a little later, because first I want to talk about the prototype. So you got to get a prototype, which is a working model of your product. It doesn't have to look perfect, but it has to work well enough that it's compelling, and that as soon as someone gets it in their hands, they get it and it works well. It wants to be functionally nice. And the only thing that works in licensing is love at first sight, because the person you're trying to license it to has plenty of noise, plenty of things to consider, and if you hand them your prototype, they're like, I don't get it, it's usually game over. And they're not going to give you a second chance. You want to put your best foot forward on your first shot. Now, the prototype doesn't have to be perfect, which can be very expensive, but it can't be disappointing. It has to be compelling. You put it there, you hand it to them, they're like, wow, that's cool. Very cool. Now you've got a chance. There's still a lot of stars that have to align. The business case has to make sense. The strategy, the budgets, the negotiation, but at least you have a shot. Whereas if it starts with confusion or unimpressed result, then you're dead before you even start. So you got to have a nice prototype. So the first P is product. The second P is prototype. And there's lots and lots of levels, but it doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect would be like, okay, let's make molds for this and bring this to market now. It's ready to go. And you don't need to take it that far unless you're actually starting a company to make the product, which is one of the reasons why it's so much more expensive to actually make things rather than licensing them. Because if you're going to make it, you can't just stop at good enough. You got to take it all the way to perfect, 3-4 more iterations sometimes, plus the tooling. Whereas if you're just prototyping for licensing, you can stop as soon as you have a prototype that's compelling, usually after 2 or 3 prototypes instead of 5 or 6, in my experience. Those are just rules of thumb. And so you get this nice prototype. Now that you've got a prototype would be the time to apply for a patent. It's usually several months later, up to a year or more later, depending on the complexity of a product. But now all of that thought and consideration and that time and development that's baked into that product can be captured in the patent, increasing the likelihood that you'll end up with a patent that has investable grade value in the end, because a patent becomes a vehicle to capture the value of your idea. So you can have this great idea, the patent captures it and allows you to hand another company a basket of value. Without the patent or the pending patent, it's just like all this, you've got a bunch of nice ideas, and it's much more difficult to offer someone a nice tidy package that says, here's something, a design, a concept, a prototype, wrapped up in a patent that I'm offering you as an opportunity. And so that's something that for a company is much easier to digest than a prototype, an idea, and a this and a that, but the value is not captured in a way that they can leverage. The purpose of the patent isn't so much that you are going to be suing people, you're giving a company the opportunity to sue other people. Because very few independent inventors actually have the money to try to sue anyone over a patent, too expensive. But the people that you're licensing it to hopefully do have that kind of money, and they're the ones who are looking for it, which is why your patent is your ticket to ride. So that's the third P. The final P is a presentation. You need a great looking presentation that shows your product off in its best light and very quickly and plainly expresses how it works. You don't need a video that's super full of hyperbole, but just a simple, clear, straight up video that shows how it works, presenting the product nicely and plainly to potential licensees what works best. You don't need a pretend commercial where you're like, introducing the hot dog slicer and slice it. No, you're just like, here's the hot dog slicer. You put a hot dog on, press it over, that's how it works. It's just nice and clean and tidy, so you're communicating the value in a simple way. You can point out the details, but just a nice clean presentation is what people are looking for so they can understand your idea as quickly as possible. So those are the 4 Ps of what it takes to license. What you're looking for in a licensing company is a company that has products that are similar to what you're selling. The best way I found to find them is to go on Amazon and look for similar products, identify those companies, and start creating a list. Back in the day when there were trade shows, I'd go to trade shows. When they're back, trade shows, great way to, if you're in the housewares, go to the housewares industry. Trade show in Chicago, walk around, see all the companies selling similar products, and this is how you identify potential licensees. Or you can go to places like Target or Walmart, walk up and down the aisles, find similar products, look at the brands, and find your licensees. Once you've identified potential targets, then you want to reach out to those companies, and you're looking for an opportunity to present. I usually I start with the president or the CEO, no matter how big the company is. If it's a $5 billion multinational company, we'll look to target the CEO first, or the president. We're start at the top and look to get referred down. A lot of people think they need to call the front door and come in the front door and try to work their way up, but there's all kinds of layers and layers and layers and layers. Whereas if you find through LinkedIn or networking access to people who are higher up, there's actually oftentimes they're more accessible, and if you can get a number, you just call up, ask for them by name, and the receptionist will pass you right along. If you go to a trade show, they're often the CEO or president just standing in the booth, oftentimes less busy than the people who are interacting with customers. You can ask who's in charge here, and they're happy to talk to someone as long as you show up professional and humble and say, hey, I've got a potential opportunity, can I share it with you? And you're not and first I'm going to have you sign an NDA first. Again, if you can just show it, which is why, again, so much easier to just have a patent pending so you can speak freely. So you got to move fast in presenting it once your patent is pending, though, because you've got a year of patent pending status if you file a provisional application. I'm not going to go into patent law here because I'll let some other presenters handle that, but let's say you've got that year. A lot of inventors think that year seems like a long period of time. But I like to say that in my sport, 2 years is a season, because things don't move that fast, and a lot of products take 2, 3, 5 years. I've had products take 5 years many times from idea to store. And so a lot of inventors have an idea that things are going to happen a lot faster than they are. This is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and it's very rarely a get-rich scheme. But it's a cool thing to do, and it can make money, and it's a great side hustle, because you're solving problems, making money, making the world a better place. You meet cool people. It's engaging. It's challenging. And once your product's in the store, and you walk in the store and you see your product there, this is the first time I went into a fish store. I was 25 years old, and I walked in and I saw my algae scraper hanging on a hook. And then I saw a customer walk by, look over, they gave it a second look, reached over, pulled it off the hook, and put it in their cart. That was it. I was hooked. I knew for the rest of my life that this is what I was going to be doing. Once you have that feeling that you know that you're changing the world in that way, it's like anonymous fame. I'm not famous, but my products are in houses, millions of houses around the world, making a little difference every day, and it's such a cool way to have an impact on the world. And so, if you've got great ideas, you can make money from them. It's not easy, but it's worth exploring, and the key is to not get so wrapped up in falling in love with any one idea that you lose your perspective, and that you treat it as an investment and are cautious as each step, and you continue to make sure that it makes sense to continue to invest, and you minimize your investments by doing things in the right order. Make your prototype first, keep your costs low, minimize your investments in patents, and really don't apply for foreign patents. By and large, PCTs, the patent attorneys will try to sell you the PCT applications. Foreign patents, don't do it. You spend tons of money. There's plenty of market here, and you're not going to be able to enforce it abroad either. So this is a little side note. love you guys, patent attorneys, and most inventors don't need PCTs, just letting you know. So everyone out there, thank you for tuning in and to learn about licensing. It's a cool sport if you can master it, and the world needs your great ideas. So go out there, invent something great. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Chris Hawker, Trident Invents. Hope to see some of your ideas. Feel free to submit them. And I'm going to turn it back over to Mike here so he can sign us off.
Thank you, Christopher. You used an expression numerous times. I just want you to clarify it for our new members of the audience. What is an NDA?
Sorry, NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. It's a confidentiality agreement that's signed between you and someone else saying that they're not going to talk about publicly your idea. And so it's a way we create a confidential relationship, and it's a super important tool for inventors, but it can also become a hindrance when the inventor is so fearful that someone's going to steal their idea that they start pushing this like fear-based contract between them and potential collaborators, even people who are for no reason to distrust them or even need that kind of situation with, where you're trying to create a legal contract with personal friends or things like that. Or people who are just like not in the business. And so it prevents them from getting collaboration and information. Public disclosures, where you're publicly announcing on the internet or offering for sale, create a patent barring event. It starts a clock ticking where you publicly disclosed an idea. After a year period, you no longer apply for a patent. So if you're going to publicly disclose something, you also invalidate any non-disclosure agreements that you've previously signed with people. So not publicly disclosing things is critical to maintaining your intellectual property rights, but private disclosures don't invalidate your rights even without an NDA, as long as you express that it's a confidential disclosure and not for public so that they don't go spreading it around. But you don't have to have a contract for every disclosure. Now, the thing that a lot of people get wrong is they think that a contract is going to protect them. And the reality is they're extremely difficult to enforce an NDA. They're very difficult to prove that someone's not following it, and incredibly expensive. And so they're very difficult to actually enforce. So really what it is a record of your honorable agreement with someone else, and honorable agreements are only as effective as the honor of the people who are shaking on it or who are agreeing to. We don't shake anymore because of COVID, but so if you don't trust the person, don't think that them signing a contract is going to cause them to be honorable. Don't think that, if you don't trust the person, don't think that the contract for a non-disclosure agreement or a licensing agreement is going to cause them to behave other than they've proven through their actions. So a lot of people, cross your T's, dot your I's, and use them where necessary, but there's so much, it's just like what you're leading with creates a lot of, so you can be open, and like I said, you don't have to disclose every feature that would disclose your innovation, but you can talk about, hey, I got a problem solved, I got a better way to slice, hot dogs, and it solves the problem in a way that's cute. There's a lot you can say before you're disclosing anything. And the type of people who steal ideas are not the same type of people who have the gumption to bring them out to market as well. So it's something I talk about a lot because I think it's actually what I see as the number one thing that stops beginning inventors is they don't know how nervous they need to be about having their ideas stolen. And the answer truly is not very nervous. I'm not saying throw caution to the wind or ignore your senses, because of course don't. But also don't assume that people are out to get you, because the vast majority of people are not out to get you. The vast majority of people actually want the best for you and everyone else, in my experience.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Everybody, you can find Trident Designs on the internet. And Christopher, we have a certificate for you today. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Cross the little elbows. All right, everybody, invent and prosper.